We're going to be talking about the Cobra Kai franchise and why GenXers like myself are so excited about the new season of Cobra Kai next on another episode of Retro Serial. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Retro Serial. I'm your host Ian C. Glad you could be joining us. Before we get into today's topic, please let me remind you to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and if you're interested, the notification bell, and hit that thumbs up button. Those are small steps for you, but they really mean a lot for us to hear on the program. And if you want to go that one extra step, you can share it on your favorite social media and follow the link below to our Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate some of your funds to what we're doing here. Now, let's get into the program. Hey everyone, well, thank you for joining me again for another episode of Retro Serial. And I just want to give a shout out to Brian Anderson, who had these made up. You may remember Brian Anderson because he was on a previous show where we talked about Star Wars novels, and he made a few of these up for me for Christmas. They're not for sale yet at this point. There's only a few of them. And as far as how to even do all that stuff, I'm still learning. I'm still trying to grow this YouTube empire. But I just wanted to say that these are really cool. And eventually, I will be able to sell these things like this. And if you're only listening to this on podcast form, what I have here is I have a Retro Serial mug, and it has a character of me on there, and it says Retro Serial with E and C, and there's like this thing that looks like a milk that's being poured out, and it has X's and Y's being poured into milk. So it's a really, really super cool mug. I was elated to get it for Christmas, and I'm very thankful that I have it. And I just wanted to say thank you to Brian for that. So today on the show, I don't have a guest, but that's okay because I can be pretty long-winded, especially about a particular subject that I'm interested in, like Cobra Kai and the Karate Kid. And what I want to do is I want to talk about the Karate Kid franchise in general, but I want to break it down into two specific parts. And it's real easy to follow these two specific parts, Cobra Kai and everything else. Okay, so I'm going to talk about everything else first, and then I'm going to talk about Cobra Kai at the end and why people like myself and many Gen Xers are excited about the new season that's coming up in just a few days. This is a little rushed because originally season 3 was going to come out I think on the 9th, and they just announced a day or two ago that they're pushing it up to the 1st. So if this isn't totally, completely refined, I did a lot of cramming, rewatching all the movies, going through the Cobra Kai, so I had to cram a little bit for this. But what I want to do is I want to talk about, like I said, I want to talk about everything that's not Cobra Kai first, and then Cobra Kai kind of at the end, and why we're so excited about this new series coming out. So when I talk about everything else, here's what I'd like to do. We have the entire franchise, which consists of one cartoon and 5 movies. Yeah, 5 movies. And I want to rank them. I want to rank them from greatest to worst and talk about each one and do a critique of each one with their, like a film critique of each one, just from my vantage point and how I see it. Okay, and as a result, I don't like to be too negative on the show and talk about movies that I don't like or how bad something was or whatever it is. But unfortunately, when you have a franchise that consists of a large amount of movies, eventually you're going to get a movie that's just a stinker or 2 movies that are stinkers. And so I'm going to try to be as kind and as positive as possible. But the truth of the matter is you just have to call a spade at times. And when it comes to some of the movies and some of the things that this franchise has done, they are just really terrible. But it goes from all the way from terrible to fantastic. So you're going to get the whole gamut of super negative to the positive, totally 100% fantastic. And so let's start with the movies that I like the least to the movie that I like the best. All right. Well, in talking about the movies that I liked the least, it's really a little bit difficult because the Karate Kid, the next Karate Kid, or Karate Kid Part 4 and Karate Kid Part 3 are in some ways tied for the last place position because they suffer a lot of the same problems. But I do have to say that if I had to make a decision, the Karate Kid Part 4 or the next Karate Kid was the worst of all of them. And the reason why is Karate Kid 3, even though it was a bad film, had some very good redemptive qualities that I will get to in due course. So let's start with Karate Kid, the next Karate Kid, the one with Hilary Swank that was released in 1994. Why is this such a bad movie? And really has very little redeeming qualities to it. Well, first of all, what do you get when you mix Karate Kid and Uncle Buck? Okay, you get the next Karate Kid. That's basically what this story was. As you recall, in Uncle Buck, John Candy was called into his brother's house because his brother's wife's father had a heart attack and they had to go. And after they, and then he was there to take care of these two adorable kids, but there was this one older daughter who was getting into some shady stuff. And over the course of the show, she realizes that she can't manipulate Uncle Buck the way she was able to manipulate her parents and get away with things. And of course, when she comes to understand that, she realizes that the firm foundation that she needed and, that firm hand that she needed was always something that was very, precious to her, or always something that she needed. And as a result, she changed and realized that she was messing up. And there's a whole scene at the end with the mother and the daughter, and this realization that, she's changed from being this bad girl to being kind of more of a good person and value what she sees in her mother. Well, it's almost the same story. What happens is, of course, it's Hilary Swank, and she plays the bad girl who needs redemption or needs correction in this film. But it's not her mother or her father. Her mother and father in the show are deceased due to a car accident. And it's her grandmother that she's not getting along with. And her grandmother then takes a vacation, and Pat Morita fills in, and it's the Uncle Buck situation where she realizes she can't get away with this. But the difference is that she learns karate, and there's no cute and adorable kids that, that for comic relief. So one of the problems is with any film is you have to be able to identify, with the protagonist. And as I've said over and over again, a lot of times a film is only as good as its antagonist, as its main bad guy. And so either one of those, they don't work for this film. So let's start with the antagonist, the bad guy. They wrote a ridiculously over-the-top bad guy in this film. He is a moron, and he is unrealistically bad. He is unrealistically evil. He is unrealistically maniacal. And as a result of that, it doesn't come off genuine. And so there's no real threat. And so we're not drawn into the film to feel that threat. We look at it again as cheesy and dumb. So we don't, that's the problem. It's like we don't look at it as anything that we can relate to or even semi-relate to, like something that would actually happen in this world. I mean, the guy is just over the top. He's this guy who runs security, and he has all these kids doing his bidding. And it's kind of like on the first one, it's kind of like John Kreese, but a really crazy version of John Kreese, a really cartoony version of John Kreese. So it just kind of ruins the credibility. The other part of the film that you know, you don't identify with it, that makes it a bad film, is the character arc of Hilary Swank, the Hilary Swank's character. She doesn't really need too much of a redemption in this, which kind of empties the purpose of Mr. Miyagi being there. It's one of those things where she's not really so super bad that when she becomes good, that there's this big change and this big reveal, and then you go, oh, okay, cool, this is a really cool redemptive arc. Like, her biggest problem is is not drugs, it's not alcohol, it's not carousing, it's none of that stuff. Her biggest problem is that she has to take care of a bird. I mean, like, you know, all troubled kids take care of hurt birds, right? It was a hawk or something. I don't exactly remember. A hawk, yeah, I think it was a hawk. It certainly wasn't an eagle. It was more than just like a pigeon or something. And, you know, she's secretly sneaking out to take care of hurt animals, you know, like all troubled kids do, right? I mean, all troubled kids kind of sneak out of their house to take care of troubled animals. I mean, I knew that when I was a troubled kid, that's exactly what I did, is I snuck out of the house to take care of troubled animals. And so the character arc is really not that good. The other thing in it is, you know, the martial arts really wasn't fantastic. The writing was a little corny, a little cheesy. The development between the love interest was, I don't know, underdeveloped. It was just really kind of a bad movie with not a lot of really great redemptive qualities in any way. So that's why it ranks the last on my list as far as the Karate Kid franchise is concerned. And I think it ranks the last on a lot of other people's lists too. Okay, so next on the list is Karate Kid Part 3. And this one is a little bit of a mixed bag. Now, I would consider this still a bad movie, but it had some redemptive qualities in it that makes it come out ahead of the next Karate Kid, as I've already said. So let's get to this mixed bag, this thing. Well, first of all, it suffers from the same problem with the bad guy that the previous film I talked about did. The bad guy is just cartoony and he's over the top. He is, you know, Terry Silva, and he's in the revenge business now, and he says the most ridiculous things like, hold all my calls, I'm totally in the revenge business for the next few days. He says that to his secretary, hold all my appointments, I'm going to be focused on revenge. It's like, and it's like this totally unrealistic bad guy that really doesn't have much to be feared. Then the other aspect of it is that makes it a bad film that we didn't like, particularly those of us who were fans of the Karate Kid, is that Daniel's character arc in this one, he just becomes a more whiny version of himself, you know? Like, so in the first one, he's this kid that kind of questions things. And then in the second one, which I'll get to, he's a little bit more whiny. But in this third film, man, I mean, I cannot believe how whiny he is throughout the whole film. He's like, oh, come on, Mr. Miyagi, and Mr. Miyagi, and I don't want Mr. Miyagi, and Mr. I mean, if you haven't seen the film for a while, don't. I mean, you're doing yourself a favor. But if you want to go back and watch the film, you'll see that this guy just continually whines to Mr. Miyagi about everything that is going on in his life. So to see this character that we really liked become this very, you know, whiny person, is also another strike against it, and another reason why I personally think, and many other people think, that it's a bad film. We're losing hope with Danny. We're losing interest in him as a person. So it went from up here to down, down here, which in that case, it's kind of one of those things where it's like it's worse than the next Karate Kid, because we're introduced to a new character that we don't care anything about in the next Karate Kid. But in this one, it's like we cared about this guy, and now he seems like such a loser. So the other thing that I didn't care for about this film was the martial arts reveal in it, and how he wins the fight, okay? So in the first one, we have the iconic crane kick. He sees this crane kick, he sees his mentor doing it, he imitates it, and then finally at the end, he pulls it off. And that was like super cool, super cool show, or super cool reveal. And the second one I thought was just as good. He learns this drum pattern where he's learning basically to block and strike at the same time, or move and strike at the same time by off angling, and they do the drum thing, and he pulls that out at the end and he wins that. That was cool. In this one is this like he learns this, this kata, and then at the very end of the film he starts doing his kata and then he wins. Just for a martial artist and for somebody who really liked those first two tropes, that trope that was played the first two times, it really looked like they were just searching for that third trope. And it just didn't seem like it was working for them at all. It didn't work for me. I didn't enjoy it whatsoever. I thought that was super lame for him to do that. Okay, so this brings us to another part of the film that I didn't particularly enjoy, and that was the fact that the interaction between him and the main girl was just it was idiotic. And I didn't realize this the first time I saw the Karate Kid Part 3, but going back and watching it, I'm like, I do not know why that girl stuck around whatsoever. Every time she is with, other than the very first time she meets him, okay, other than the very first time that she meets this guy, what happens is every time after that, she gets her ass kicked, or excuse my language, or she almost gets killed. She gets threatened, and it's like 4 times that this happens throughout the show. And she's with Daniel, and something really bad happens. And I'm thinking to myself, why is this chick sticking around? I mean, it would be like the first time that we're going to go over, and then people bust in and shake him down, and, turn tables over at the Mr. Miyagi bonsai store. I'd be like, you run with a pretty rough crowd. And then the other time they're getting dumped off a cliff, practically, life-threatening. And it would be like, I would stop. I don't think any girl would hang in there. I'd be like, look, there's no romantic interest here. They made that abundantly clear at the very beginning of the show. So just get out of it altogether, right? Get out of it. So that kind of wore on me a little bit. I was just like, why in the world is she still around? So and then the other thing I kind of wanted to mention is for these people who are in the revenge business, Terry Silva, and then you had John Kreese, and you had the other guy that they hired to be their champion for them. I mean, really losing a tournament, I mean, is that the worst thing in the world? Like, we want to make him suffer. Yeah, okay, so make him suffer by making him lose his title, which I guess, I mean, in a way that's bad, but it's not like it's UFC and he's losing that title, or, a boxing championship. I mean, it's basically a karate championship. It's not even like worlds or something. It's just a local kind of a thing. And he gets kind of hit hard or whatever, but as far as like, oh, this is going to be our apex of revenge, come on. All right. So let me talk finally in the end about the redemptive quality of this show. And this is something that every martial artist can identify with, or anybody who's actually involved in any kind of sport where you kind of have a mentor student role. And that is it explored that split that happens between you and your mentor. Okay. And this happens, or if you're the mentor now and your student split. So I don't know if I've mentioned this on the program before or not. I think I did back when we talked about martial arts shows of the 80s and what we learned from them. But I've been doing martial arts almost my entire life. A subject for another show altogether, but this happens. This is true. The theme that was explored, where a student has to disagree with his instructor, is a serious matter that happens in all martial arts at some point, where that person kind of breaks off and breaks away. And you explored this in that film, where Danny basically had to do what was right for him. And even though Mr. Miyagi didn't understand why it was right, and tried to persuade Danny as to why it was right, why he should follow his path and not this path. In the end, it didn't work, and there was a split, which they get back together. But for a short point in the film, there's a split between the student and the instructor. And as somebody I've been on both sides of this, by the way, and it is serious. There comes a point where you realize that your student is going to go a direction, whether you like that direction or not, or whether or not you think it's best or not. And sometimes that student is wrong and they have to learn the hard way. And sometimes as a teacher, you're like, okay, that person was right, and I should have saw it. And as a student too, you might have to disagree with your instructor. You're like, I've got to do this way. This is my path. This is something integral to me. So being on both sides of this, I have to say that I was identifying with both Mr. Miyagi and Daniel in this. And I got to say that it's harder as a teacher than it is as a student. Quite honestly, it's harder as a teacher because you feel like you've made a mistake as a teacher. And as you're the one who's kind of responsible for their understanding of the martial arts, or their understanding of a sport or whatever. But that was explored in this show, and good for them. That was one of the things that was realistic and awesome about that show. So this brings us to our next entry in the franchise, and that is The Karate Kid, the cartoon. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever seen The Karate Kid, the cartoon, or you even know that one existed, but it did run for a short period of time in the 80s, as I recall. And I was not a huge fan of the cartoon because it's a cartoon. And I think by the time the cartoon came out, I was already kind of getting out of cartoons. I was kind of growing out of that stage in my life. And I only watched one in preparation just to make sure that I, knew something about it rather than know nothing about it. It's a cartoon. It's for kids. I mean, take it or leave it. Like it, don't like it. It's kind of funny. I mean, Mr. Miyagi, it's almost like a James Bond kind of a thing. Mr. Miyagi has this statue of I don't know what it is. It's an amulet or something, and it has secret power. And anyway, and he goes around solving these crimes and things like that. So it's kind of like this detective thing, secret agent kind of thing. They do some pretty cool stuff. I saw a lot of clips. I didn't just see, I saw the one cartoon, but I saw a lot of clips that were available. I could really only find one cartoon available on YouTube for free. So that's it. I mean, Karate Kid, it's a cartoon. It's for kids. I don't love it. I wouldn't watch it, and it's not like one of those cartoons that are made for adults, like some of the superhero cartoons these days, the Batman series and stuff like that adults could get into. It's really kind of cheesy, but take it for what it's worth. It was fun to watch one of them, a little bit of nostalgia, but not highly recommended. And then also then taking the next position after that is the reboot movie with Jackie Chan. Now, this is one of those movies that I have mixed feelings about. And I actually wish that they would have gone with the original title, which was going to be The Kung Fu Kid. For someone who is both a fan of The Karate Kid and a fan of martial arts, to call something The Karate Kid, which actually has no karate in it and has kung fu in it instead of karate, that kind of irks me. So I'm a martial arts geek, and as a result of being a martial arts geek, I know the difference between karate and kung fu, and it's not all the same thing. And so there's actually a lot of drastic differences. And so to call something The Karate Kid when it's actually should be called The Kung Fu Kid, really kind of grinded on me a little bit, but that could just be me overreacting. But let's say this. Let's start with the positives. So the positives on this film was the martial arts are phenomenal, okay? Excellent martial arts. Jackie Chan, what an excellent martial artist he is. And of course, I like the reboot aspect of it. I think they did a pretty good job as far as that's concerned. I just didn't like, there's only a couple things I didn't like, and I'll be brief on this. I didn't like the fact that they lowered the age. It seemed to trivialize it a bit. Because they lowered the age, then his relationship with the girl seemed to be less dramatic, and Jackie Chan's fight with all those kids is kind of silly. Okay, so that was the idea with that one. It was just a little bit silly for me. Because, I mean, he's fighting a bunch of 11-year-olds, 10, 11-year-olds, maybe 12, whatever. And he's a grown man, who couldn't beat, but I guess he did it in such an artistic way that he didn't really hurt them all that much, which was kind of cool. But it just wasn't that dramatic. When you have Pat Morita, who at the time was an old guy, taking on 16 and 17-year-olds, 5 of them, I believe, 5, 16 and 7, 5 trained 16 and 17-year-olds, that is a bit of a challenge. That's kind of scary, and it's dramatic. But to see Jackie Chan whoop up on a bunch of kids really kind of didn't do it for me. So those are the two middle positions, take them or leave them. The cartoon, but the martial arts was good. If they wanted to keep it The Karate Kid, I wish they would have just switched it to Okinawa or Japan. They could have done that. They could have just as easily switched it to a place in Japan or a place in Okinawa and still called it The Karate Kid if they wanted to do that. And while Jackie Chan's mostly a kung fu expert, he could easily do, I'm sure, karate as well as he could do kung fu. So that's kind of the middle positions. Those are things that you take or leave. They're good in their own respect. The negative's a little bit negative, but not terrible. But let me just say the Karate Kid reboot is a good movie. If they would have just changed the name to The Kung Fu Kid, it would have been a great movie. I did also like, instead of doing the wax on, wax off thing and sand the floor, he did the pick up the coat thing. I thought that was phenomenal. The filming was great. The end scene where he's doing the snake on one leg was a really cool reveal. It's a little elaborate, but it's very beautiful. It's a very beautiful film. And so for that's why that one even wins out over the other two in the franchise, because it's actually a pretty good film with only a couple of flaws that only irk me slightly. So that's why it takes that position. Okay, well, this brings us to our number 2 and number 1 position. And this is a really difficult decision for me because Karate Kid 1 and 2 are, in my opinion, nearly flawless films. And choosing which one is better is really, really super difficult for me. So I'm going to talk about them together, and I'm going to talk about well, I'll just let you know the decision that I made finally was number 2 belongs in the number 2 spot, and number 1 belongs in the number 1 spot. So Karate Kid, the original, and then Karate Kid 2. But quite honestly, I loved both of these movies. Absolutely adored both of these movies. And at the time when Karate Kid Part 2 came out, I actually preferred Karate Kid Part 2 to Karate Kid Part 1. However, rewatching them, I do see that Karate Kid 1, the original, had a little bit more going for it than the second one did. And the second one suffered just slightly more than the first one did. So let me just talk about these. I'm going to talk about the two of them together. First of all, great story, particularly the original one. I mean, the original one, the character arc, you have this kid who is growing up without a father, single mother, needs a mentor in his life, getting bullied at school, and he, doesn't need a mentor, but needs to learn how to fight and overcome fear and all those emotions that people genuinely deal with are explicit in this film and come across in the Karate Kid and are genuine. Okay, it's not artificial. And as far as the Karate Kid Part 2 is concerned as well, like, this is everything you want in a Part 2. It's its own story. It doesn't try to ape or imitate. It pushes the characters forward. It pushes them forward in a believable way. You're not disappointed that they took some weird or drastic turn. It happens on a different continent. I mean, everything about it was actually really super good. So both of these films are good films. Their character arcs, and the second one, so what's good about it? Let's just talk about it. What's good? Well, first of all, as I said before, your movies only as good as your villain. And both of these had great villains. The first one with John Kreese was the main villain, and Johnny Lawrence and all the other kids who were kind of brainwashed by John Kreese into believing a certain way were seriously believable characters and seriously believable threats. And in the second one, that was true as well. They didn't miss out on that trope in the second one. You had the Santo, who was Miyagi's friend, who now is his enemy because of, well, you watch the film yourself, but, because he loses his honor because the girl that anyway, I mean, it's real believable about how he could carry this around in his heart. And in the second one too, the kid Chosen, who's Daniel's adversary, plays a perfect narcissist. I mean, he really does. I was watching that film and I'm like, this is classic narcissistic behavior. Somebody who does something horrible, does horrible things, and cannot accept any responsibility himself. As a matter of fact, not only can he not accept responsibility, but he's actually mad at the person who reminds them of their problem. And that's exactly what Chosen was. The martial arts were great. I mean, Pat Morita and Daniel LaRusso, or Pat Morita and Ralph Macchio, I should say, aren't the best and skilled martial artists. They're a little awkward at it. I wish they would have spent a little bit more time. But, but at the time, through camera work and stuff like that, Pat Morita came off as this super excellent, genius. Daniel needed a little bit more help, or in my opinion, but still, it was still fairly good. It was still really good stuff. And in the first one, he was a beginner. I mean, really, he only had a couple of classes at the Y, and then he only has 2 months to train. So the fact that he's not that well refined of a martial artist actually plays off kind of well, as I ponder it. But then you have the people who have been doing martial arts for a long time in the film. So all the Johnny Lawrence and Bobby and all those people, and Chosen in the second one. These were all actually really good martial artists. Now, I'm not sure. I think that the character, Johnny Lawrence, the guy who plays the character, it's slipping my mind right now. I should know this. But he's actually really good. I don't think he did martial arts before this, but he acquired the talent pretty good, fairly well, to make him believable as a threat. And then the guy who played Chosen, I don't know what his martial arts background is for sure, but he did an excellent job as well. Very believable as far as threats are concerned, and very believable as far as bullies in the first one, and as far as honor and psychos in the second one. And so for that, but I guess the first one, the character arc and that idea of being this lost kid who needs this father figure and who needs to learn bravery and overcome bullies, I guess that would kind of lead me into that one being the best one. The second one really is more Mr. Miyagi's story, but with a strong emphasis on Daniel as well. But I have to say that in rewatching it, Daniel is a little bit more whiny in this second one, where in the first one, he's kind of like a little bit of more of a smart ass and not whiny. He kind of sticks up for himself and whatever. But in the second one, he's just like, Mr. Miyagi, why are we doing this? And didn't you say this? And how do you do this? And anyway, it's a little bit, it just grades on me a little. So I had to give this the second one, Karate Kid Part 2, the number 2 position, and Karate Kid Part 1, the number 1 position. Both, but seriously, both fantastic movies. I mean, both for me would be 2 thumbs up. So that's a wrap on the franchise as far as everything but Cobra Kai is concerned. So now let's talk about why people like myself and why other Gen Xers are so excited about this show coming out, the new season of Karate Kid, or the new season of Cobra Kai. Pardon me. The new season of Cobra Kai. Why are we so excited about it? Why does it resonate with us so much? Well, first of all, you have to admit that there's that nostalgic effect. I mean, these were, for many of us growing up, characters that we want to see more of. Characters that we became attached to and are excited that their story didn't end, or excited that their story doesn't end simply in our imaginations. And that's the case with a lot of times with a movie that you really like, and you get attached to the characters and you're really super excited about it, and then it ends and you have your imagination left. Particularly as a kid, it was in my imagination as to what the adventures were of Mr. Miyagi and Daniel LaRusso in the future. Well, of course, in these ones, Mr. Miyagi, because Pat Morita has passed on, is not involved. But we were excited about it. So what else? So it's that nostalgic effect. It's that connection effect. It's that fact that we get to see these people again. Well, the other reason we're excited about it is because they did such a fantastic job with Cobra Kai Season 1 and Season 2. And, and this kind of flows in line with what I'm saying. You see, whenever there's like this long period of time and then this reboot where you get to see these characters again, we're skeptical. Okay, we're worried. We're worried that they're going to mess it up, right? Because you have this picture in your head about what these characters would have turned out to be. And of course, it's never exactly what it is, but you have this range of possibilities in your brain and in your mind as to what could the possibilities be as far as these characters and how their lives would turn out. And this film did not disappoint as far as that's concerned. Or the Cobra Kai season 1 and season 2 didn't disappoint in that. So we like that. We like that it looked like Daniel LaRusso, because he had this strong influence as a young kid, and because he learned a foundational skill that could help him, grow. He became a successful car lot salesperson. He became successful at that. And Johnny Lawrence, because he didn't have that and he kind of missed out on that, and his teacher at the end tried to strangle him, we can see that he ended up where he ended up. Not in a terrible place by any means. No judgment as far as, like the type of work and the lifestyle he has to do. But we see, okay, that's where, if you don't have a good foundation and you have a bad home and all this stuff, that's where that can lead. And it's something that we've experienced. I think we've all experienced. Now, that's not to say that there isn't the rare exception of the person who grows up in the horrible home and who makes it through all the impossible odds. But those are the exceptions, right? And so it's realistic. The other thing that why I'm looking forward to this is this next season is due to the fact that when you're watching these films, it's not so black and white as it was in the original. Okay, in the original, it was like, here's the good guys, here's the bad guys. But in this next iteration of it, you have a mix, which is pretty realistic as far as who's a good guy and who's a bad guy. Johnny Lawrence isn't the bad guy. He's actually kind of more the star of the show. Of course, Daniel's a little bit more of a star too. But anyway, but what you have is you have him being both good and bad, and having him being both right and wrong, which you identify with more as an older person. As a kid, you see things very much black and white. I mean, you do. I mean, Star Wars is like at the Force, and there's a dark side, and there's the good side, and all that stuff. So you see this divided up. But as the course of your life goes on, you realize that, boy, I've made good decisions and I've made bad decisions, and I'm the good guy in my own movie of my own life in my own head, but in all reality, I'm probably the villain in somebody else's story. And so that character arc or that idea is expressed in these films. The other thing is that we liked about these first two, why we're excited about the third one, is because they did such a fantastic job with the first one in the fact that, number one, the characters are real. The characters aren't flat. They're not black and white. It's gray. It's a mixed bag. The other thing is it introduces a new set of issues. Now you're seeing these main characters taking on the role of mentor with new kids who have these problems. Okay, the various problems that they have throughout the show. And that's interesting too, because as a kid, you're looking at Johnny Lawrence, you're looking at Daniel LaRusso, and you're thinking, I identify with that as a kid. And then now, as an adult, I'm looking at them going, okay, I still identify with these guys as adults, and I'm identifying with not with just them as a person, but with them as far as their problems are concerned, what's coming up in their life. Also, we want to see these guys work it out. I mean, we want to see the fact that they're not that different. I mean, I just want to see them work it out. I really do. I want to see Johnny Lawrence and Daniel LaRusso becoming friends. And let me say too that the martial arts looks it's phenomenal. I love the martial arts. As a martial arts film enthusiast, as a martial arts enthusiast in general, I love those. I love Cobra Kai and the martial arts in Cobra Kai. It's excellent. And it's a funny show too. I mean, it's funny. There's a lot of hilarity to it. That's my take. Why are we so excited? Why does it appeal to us? Well, let me just recap. There's that nostalgia. There's the fact that we want to connect with these characters again because they meant so much to us. There's the fact that they did such a great job at that in the first 2 seasons, that we're not only connecting with them as characters, but we're also connecting with their problems that they're now having, and that the martial arts is great. And we want to see more of that. We actually are anticipating the connection of Ali Mills and these other people coming around, and that the characters aren't so flat anymore, that they've developed as human beings, as I think we want all of us to develop as human beings. So there you have it. Let me know what you think. Do you think my assessment of the franchise is correct? Do you think my assessment of why we're anticipating this is correct? Let me know in the comments below. And please don't forget to subscribe. It really means a lot to me here. Even if one of your videos goes viral these days, YouTube has kind of placed it in that you have to have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of watch time before you can get monetized. And so if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, it's a small step for you, and it really means a whole lot for us. Please also click the like button, click the bell notification if you're interested in knowing when these videos come out, and also share it on your favorite social media. If you're listening to this on podcast form, share it on your favorite social media. Give it a review and a rating. Please be honest in your review and your rating. And if you want to go that one extra step, you can follow the link below to the Buy Me a Coffee, where you can donate some of your hard-earned cash. So that's it for the program today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm ENC, and we'll talk to you again on another episode of Retro Serial. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of Retro Serial. Just a reminder for all you podcast listeners that we do have a YouTube page. Head on over there and check it out. And if you're already on YouTube and you like this video, well, you also might like these videos too.